So good evening, everyone, and welcome to Prospects for Affordable Housing under Trump, Housing Justice Educational Forum from Making Housing and Community Happen. My name is Bert Newton. This evening, our main speaker will be Shelby King of Shelterforce magazine. She will be talking about what's going on now and what to expect in affordable housing, including what is happening to low-income housing tax credits, still the largest source of funding for affordable housing, and Section 8, as well as a case study looking at Pasadena and how it will affect affordable housing here, where a lot of us are, and also a couple of California state housing bills, as well as what to be aware of on the federal level. But before all of that, I want to give a short report on the latest of what's been happening at MHCH. So I'm going to share my screen because I have a PowerPoint. Let me see here. Okay, and then I want to get to the slideshow. Sometimes they make it hard to find the buttons. Okay. There we go. So what's happening at MHCH? So our first victory this year was a 6-month eviction moratorium for people financially affected by the Eaton fire. The fire was mostly up in Altadena, but a lot of people in Pasadena, especially our immigrant workers, worked in Altadena as house cleaners, doing landscaping, or working in small businesses. So they lost their livelihood. So we teamed up with the Pasadena Job Center for this campaign. We started gathering workers and allies, going to the rental board to get that board to make a recommendation to the city council. Then we went to the city council and did the same thing, and we won. We got an eviction moratorium, 6 months for those workers. Our next victory has to do with our North Fair Oaks vision plan. North Fair Oaks, although it was once a thriving Black Main Street, is now probably the most neglected part of our city. And we've been working for the past 10 years to change that. We've created a vision plan with people and churches in that neighborhood. The motto of the team that has worked on it is beautify and not gentrify. We're doing this with things like more trees, sidewalk repairs, and affordable housing. And also something called Complete Streets, which is making the streets safer, slowing down traffic. Right now, people zoom down that street and it's very dangerous. We also want to have it designated as a historic Black Main Street. So our vision plan has been professionally written up by the Arroyo Group, a local planning firm whose managing principal lives in that neighborhood. We have already made some progress with a new stoplight and some sidewalk repairs, but in March we did a really successful action at the Planning Commission. So here are pictures from it. We mobilized the people and churches from the neighborhood, as well as some allies, to pack the Planning Commission meeting, holding signs, many of us wearing bright yellow t-shirts made for the occasion. 40 people spoke to the commission during the public comment time, explaining the vision plan. 40 people. The commission was so impressed, because it was really upbeat and well organized, they were so impressed that they instructed the city planning staff to study our vision plan and incorporate it, as much of it as possible, into the city's specific plan for that neighborhood. It was quite an amazing night. Our next victory came in June. As some of you may remember, last year we won a campaign to get affordable staff housing approved for the old Roosevelt Elementary School site. Over the last 19 years, the school district has closed 11 schools because of declining enrollment, in large part because people who send their kids to public schools, lower income and working class families, can't afford to live here and are moving away. Even staff who work for our school district can't afford to live here, so they're moving out to Riverside and San Bernardino County and commuting in from there. In fact, we found out when we started the campaign that a couple of janitors were living in their cars. So at the invitation of some allies on the school board, we did a successful campaign to get 110 units of affordable staff housing approved at the old Roosevelt Elementary School. That was a school that was closed in 2019. So pictured here is the artist's rendering of what it will look like. Well, this year there was an effort to stop it by declaring the school building a historic landmark, but we teamed up with Abundant Housing Pasadena and the housing justice team at Pasadena Mennonite Church, and we were able to defeat that effort. So next I want to talk about some of our ongoing programs. I want to start with our congregational land team. This team consults with religious congregations to build affordable housing. This team has been around for 6 years, but this month it became its own 501c3, its own nonprofit. So that's a great accomplishment. We're going to continue to work with this team. In fact, Jill is not only the chair of the board for the new nonprofit, she will continue to work with them as part of the team. The team works with congregations through visioning, feasibility studies, writing requests for proposals, interviewing developers. It's grant funded, so the services are free, but before our team will work directly with a congregation, we require them to complete a series of 4 classes that we offer in a cohort twice per year. So far, 45 congregations have completed the classes. Our team has worked directly with 35 congregations here in Southern California. 16 congregations are currently under contract. Our team has completed 33 feasibility studies and 8 RFPs, requests for proposals, and 3 congregations now have agreements with developers to build the housing, and 3 more agreements are coming soon, so it'll soon be a total of 6. In addition to all that work that the team is doing here in Southern California, it is also mentoring teams in other parts of the country, including Washington State, Colorado, Texas, and Northern California, among others. So they're replicating themselves and spreading the good work. So next I want to talk about safe parking. So there are about 15,000 people living in their vehicles in Los Angeles County. But until a few years ago, there was no safe parking program in the San Gabriel Valley, so we started one at Trinity Lutheran Church. And Trinity Lutheran is not just a host site. Their pastor and their congregation, their small congregation, has really jumped in and really been involved with this. So they're an excellent host site. And then Friends Indeed is now the service provider. They're a local agency. So we have 10 safe places to park there. They get access to a bathroom and a break room in the church. They get case management services from Friends Indeed, access to mental health treatment, linkage to other resources, including permanent housing. And so far, 16 people have been permanently housed. There are not 9 current participants, so we have 1 opening. And the really good news is that soon there is going to be a second safe parking site in Pasadena at All Saints Church. It's going to have 25 spaces. So we were the pioneers starting the first safe parking program. But when we started it, it wasn't even legal. The city didn't want to permit it. So we started the program under the radar, not quite legal. But we were able to make our program legal through advocacy at hearings and city council meetings. And in fact, the main advocates at those meetings were the program participants themselves, the safe parkers. They advocated for themselves. And so the program, they were successful making the program legal, and now it is permitted. And I have to say, I've never heard better advocacy in all my years of going to public city meetings than when the safe parkers advocated for themselves. They were amazing. And because of them, our city is now working with another church site to establish a second safe parking program with 25 spaces. If you know someone who needs to access our program, who's living in their cars, you can contact Friends Indeed at 626-797-2402 or info@friendsindeedpass.org. So then next I want to talk about our one-day housing justice institutes. This is something that Jill leads. These are city specific. She's invited by a group of people into another city and works with a group there for months. They do months of research, researching the history of the city, how they got to where they are, and what might work to increase housing justice there. And that culminates in a one-day housing justice institute. And then at the end of it all, there is a local housing justice group in that city. This is a way of replicating ourselves in other places. So Jill has done a number of these in Southern California. She's also done 7 of them in Colorado and 1 in Durham, North Carolina. So it stretches across the country. And in March, she did one in La Cañada. So for those of you who know this area, La Cañada is a very wealthy town right next to us, right next to Pasadena, virtually no affordable housing. But there is a group of churches up there who want to work for and struggle for housing justice. So Jill worked with them, and now there is a housing justice team in La Cañada, California, which is amazing. Now, if you want Jill to work with you in your city, you can contact her this way, Jill@makinghousinghappen.com. Jill@makinghousinghappen.com. I'm about to hand it over to Jill, but I would just want to say real quickly that we're a faith-rooted organization. We work primarily through faith community, and we define faith broadly. But if you want your congregation to get involved with us, you can contact me, Bert Newton, bert@makinghousinghappen.org, or 626-993-7958. And with that, I am going to hand it off to Jill. So she's going to talk about a program that she's been developing, she and Anthony, in response to the Eaton fire.
Thank you, Bert. That was excellent. I am trying to figure out how I spotlight myself, but I'm not sure if I remember how. Anyway, let me talk to you about the RV program. The Typically we do permanent housing. We were approached by the Pasadena Community Foundation with some donations that were given to do temporary housing, to do RVs for people whose homes had burned. And so I told the Pasadena Community Foundation we'd be open to exploring that. And we now have a wonderful team, collaborative partners. We are in the process of selecting our first candidate. That's key because when we have that person selected, we're going to tell their story from beginning to end when they get their keys and when they get their house built. And we'll be able to put that on TV and radio all over the world. And the reason we could do that is because El Monte RV is a global company and they're the one that we're partnering with. And so it'll be very exciting. If any of you see those spots on TV or radio, don't hesitate to donate to help somebody be in an RV while their house is being built. Almost everyone that we've interviewed could use these. There's a huge need. Um, People's insurance is not stretching quite enough to rebuild homes. Um, Finding a place to live that they can afford in this area, $3,500 a month is ridiculous. So when they see there's an opportunity to save some money by having an RV that we're going to offer for $1 a month per year, it's a huge, huge encouragement to folks. So that's what we're doing. We hope it succeeds. So pray for us. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Jill. So next, Anthony, I think you're going to introduce our main speaker.
Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes, can.
Okay. Uh, so I got to know Shelby King when Jill and I went to Newark, New Jersey in May to attend a celebration of the 50th anniversary of Shelterforce magazine. I must say, Shelby was definitely the life of the party, full of enthusiasm for her work. And Shelterforce is a magazine that Jill and I read religiously because it's thoughtful, well-researched articles about tenants' rights, affordable housing, and other issues that we care about. Shelby has been covering housing and development since 2014 and became the first investigative journalist for Shelterforce in 2023. We invited her in part because of her piece on housing policy during the first 100 days of the Trump administration. Since then, she's done extensive research on everything from Section 8 vouchers to the impact of ICE on immigrants living in subsidized housing. Shelby cares deeply about people who are struggling with housing, and I am really looking forward to hearing what she has to share with us tonight. So take it away, Shelby.
Thank you, Anthony. Can you all hear me all right? Good. Okay, great. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming here and being here this evening. And thank you, MHCH, for inviting me. As Anthony so kindly said, I am Shelterforce's investigative reporter. My name is Shelby King. I have worked there since 2021, actually, but you were really close. But I have been covering housing exclusively since 2014. Shelterforce is a 50-year-old publication. We're based in the Northeast area of the country in New Jersey, but we cover national news. We're focused on community development, affordable housing, neighborhood stabilization. Here, I'm going to go ahead and put a link to both our website if you would like to check out our articles, my stories. We have a lot of freelancers, and then we have a lot of guest contributors who are everybody from nonprofit leaders to academics to policymakers. So there's a lot to read on there. And I also included my email. If you want to contact me, I would love to talk to anybody after the meeting tonight. So thank you so much. I cover housing policy. We are a we are a national newspaper, but I cover everything from federal policy down to the local level. So today I'm planning on walking you through some of the federal policies that we are currently dealing with that are being proposed. What the chances are maybe they are going to get passed, what we might see, and what's at stake if they are enacted. Then I'll kind of bring it down to how they will work in California, particularly, and then bring it down to the Pasadena level and talk to you guys about maybe things that you can really relate to, hopefully. So we can start in Washington. Because what's happening at the federal level is already changing how affordable housing functions in across the country. I'm sure y'all feel it in California. So you probably all know that HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, administers all federal housing assistance. It was, of course, one of the federal agencies that was effectively gutted via layoffs and buyouts and firings in the first months that Trump took office. In late May, Trump gave to Congress its fiscal year 2026 HUD budget proposal. The White House does this, of course, every year, and then Congress enacts the laws that actually uphold what the president suggests or proposes. Trump, during his first term, always took a swipe at HUD, but in late May, this year's proposal was just a huge gutting of the entire agency were it to be enacted. It's a 44% cut, dropping HUD's total budget from 89 billion, I believe it is. It's in the upper 80s down to about 43 and a half. It was a 44% proposed cut. Within that, 26 billion of it, I believe, came from a cut to rental assistance alone. That includes Section 8, which we're going to talk about. It includes project-based rental assistance, which is part of the Section 8 program, but instead of going with the tenants, it goes with the units, of course. It proposed to cut supportive housings like Section 202, Section 811, which are for folks with disabilities. It proposed to cut Native programs. There was just a lot that was at stake or is at stake. Section 8, of course, is the backbone, also known as the Housing Choice Voucher Program, just to make sure we all know what I'm talking about here. It is the backbone of how folks afford the houses that they live in. As of 2022, it was almost 5 million households received rental assistance through the Section 8 program, and about almost 4 million of those received Section 8 vouchers, I believe. Don't quote me on my numbers because I'm not looking directly at them. Section 8 vouchers, you probably all know, allow folks to pay 30% of their monthly income approximately, and then the federal government picks up the rest. So the new proposed budget would do more than cut Section 8. The proposal would actually change the entire way that Section 8 is administered. Instead of being administered as a grant that is specific to particular programs, it would be cut in half and then doled out to states in a block grant, which would allow them to spend it on whatever they wanted. So, for example, if you had a state that did not want to include congregations in how it administers its Section 8, there would be no restrictions on how they dole those vouchers out. So not only does this change the entire way HUD is set up and the way HUD is administered, but it changes kind of the entire feeling of HUD from its main point being to support low income families and to help folks who need assistance to providing them a temporary, the new HUD leader, Scott Turner, has spoken at length about having Section 8 and vouchers be a temporary thing for folks who need some time to get back on their feet. They're suggesting that folks need to have work requirements. They're suggesting that folks need to have time limits to be on there, not taking into account that most of the folks who receive Section 8 are older. A lot of them are retirees. They are on Social Security. They don't have a way to make up the difference if they were to be kicked off of Section 8. So on the federal level, Section 8 and low income affordable housing vouchers in general are being attacked. So it's definitely something that folks should watch. In addition, the proposal from HUD eliminates many community development programs and homelessness programs, including the home program, continuum of care programs supporting housing tools like HOPWA, which is the Housing Opportunities for People with AIDS. It includes fair housing initiatives. They've chopped at a lot of those. And in addition to that, they have, of course, gutted HUD, so enforcing the programs that they did leave in place is nearly impossible because they've cut the work staff by so much. So, as I said, it's more than just a budget cut on the federal level. It is a shift in the overall philosophy. It signals a shift from a rights-based entitlement to a discretionary state-controlled type of aid that would not be guaranteed to folks anymore. We already have a huge shortage of vouchers, and it would create an insurmountable gap, really. For example, I wrote a story recently discussing, I spoke with Kentucky, some folks in Kentucky, and they said that if HUD's budget were to pass, they would lose almost $250 million every year. There's no way for states to make up that much money. You can't. You can't. I think, as she said, you can't cut enough corners. There's not enough savings to make up that amount of money. So, of course, this is just the president's proposed budget. And probably a lot of you are thinking that, of course, this won't be enacted, right? Well, one would think that legislators would understand that we need affordable housing, especially right now in the midst of a housing crisis. And a lot of legislators really do disagree with the cuts. But of course, as we know, we have a Congress that is controlled by the right, and they are willing to push things through when they can. And so I think that the Senate Appropriations Committee recently produced its spending bill. It restored and maintained several of the programs that the president tried to cut. It did not block grant the Section 8 housing vouchers. So we got some good news from Congress appropriations, but it still is not enough funding for where we're at. So, for example, in January, I believe, I read, actually just recently, I read in the LAist, right? Let me look at my notes here. In the LAist, they said that the current one-bedroom cap on an apartment that Section 8 will cover is $2,820 per month in the zip code 90034. This includes LA's renter-heavy neighborhood of Palms. Y'all probably know where that is, I'm guessing. So starting August 1st, because of the cuts that have been proposed, because of the cuts that are coming, the city will reduce the limit for Section 8 voucher holders in that zip code to $2,585 per month. So that's a $300 reduction in the upper limit cap for what the federal government will cover its part of the rent on. This sounds like still a lot of money, but when you look at rentcafe.com says that the current average rent for an apartment in Palms is $2,815. So if the cap is at $2,500 and average rent in Palms is $2,800, then how are these folks who even do get the vouchers going to find somewhere to live? So that's one example of how the federal policy is already trickling down into states and into localities. So the immediate reductions, of course, are going to affect millions of people across the country, definitely in high rent areas like California. This is you'll see a lot of people unable to use their vouchers, people who are getting evicted because they can't pay the difference in the rent. We will probably see a lot of people become homeless, or a lot of people seeking help from shelters. But above and beyond that, the uncertainty that this is creating is already harming policies, and this is going to harm folks long term. So, for example, we just watched as Congress cut Medicaid. They have dismantled the Department of Education. So it's not just that housing is being attacked, it's that housing is being attacked, medical is being attacked, school is being attacked. We're taking money and workers from all of these programs, and they are all intertwined. So, as far as direct effects on housing goes, the public housing authorities, nonprofits, affordable housing providers across the country, even for-profit ones, all sorts of cities, large metros. I've heard from small and mid-sized cities, folks in rural areas, all of these folks that want to create more housing and want to house more people, they are stalling voucher issuances because they don't know how much money is coming. They are pausing on new applications. They are otherwise just looking for ways to cut corners, whether that is like the LAist reported, whether that's reducing the amount that they can cover, whether it's not giving folks vouchers, not issuing new vouchers, not reissuing vouchers that they lose or that they gain back from attrition. Like if a family no longer needs it, they're just holding on to those vouchers. So we're already seeing effects, even though the budget cuts have not been severe and as severe as we thought they would be, and they are projected to be far less devastating than if the Trump administration got its way. It is still causing such havoc that folks are delaying not just handing out vouchers, but they're also delaying development. So development, and I guess what I should say before I get into the development part is that if the federal government is no longer paying your rent and you're a landlord who accepts Section 8 vouchers, but you're no longer guaranteed that money, then these landlords that are already reluctant in a lot of places to take Section 8 vouchers are going to leave the program. And you're going to have fewer units. You're going to have fewer landlords willing to take vouchers where they don't have to take them. And that guaranteed rent is really the only incentive that landlords have. So I think that uncertainty is causing landlords to leave, which means we're losing units. So then into the development side, you all know how expensive it is to build affordable housing. Of course, Jim, I heard the 189 units. That's fantastic. I'm sure you run on such thin margins that with the uncertainty and the increased risk, especially this much, that can easily derail a project. Situations like that can easily derail a project or slow it down to the point where other layers of funding no longer exist. And if you lose one layer of funding, then the whole kind of house of cards can fall in. And so I think that the increase in risk and the increase in uncertainty If the federal government can no longer be relied on to subsidize already expensive housing, affordable housing development, then folks who are interested in building affordable housing will just leave the industry, just like the landlords, because not only can they not make it pencil, but it's so much simpler to build market rate housing. So the cascading effect of what's going on at the federal level is it might not be being felt yet, quite yet on the local level, but the shift without actual need or regard for HUD's need is going to create real problems on the ground here very soon, I think. So I think let's move into some of the programs that we wanted to talk about Section 8 specifically, and also about LIHTC. I think what's important to draw the connection here is how those two programs work together, and how if one is unsupported, then the other one is unsupported. So we've been talking about Section 8 vouchers as in tenant-based vouchers usually, which are the ones that, a tenant applies for and receives a voucher, and then wherever that tenant can find housing, that voucher covers the remainder of the rent above 30% of their income, excuse me. There are also project-based vouchers, and those vouchers are issued to the building, and they stay with the building for the life of the vouchers. So those project-based vouchers are one of the many layers that affordable housing developers use in order to make their developments pencil out. LIHTC, on the other hand, the low-income housing tax credit is, as Bert said, I believe, the government's largest and most successful tool for financing affordable housing construction. Since it was implemented in 87, it has built 3-something million units. They have built a lot of houses, or a lot of units with LIHTC, and it currently accounts, I think, for 90%. Pays for 90% of all new affordable housing built in the US. So the administration recently, in the big, beautiful bill that recently passed, permanently boosted LIHTC allocations. They're giving more money to build more LIHTC housing, which, let's see, what is the permanently boost? I don't want to get too into the weeds on LIHTC funding, but they have 9% tax credits and they have 4% tax credits. They are giving more 9% tax credits, and those are the attractive ones, I should say, to developers. So they've boosted those by 12%, I believe. They're giving more money to the LIHTC program, and they say that this should boost the amount of housing that they're able to produce, which theoretically it should. But the catch, of course, is that LIHTC by itself LIHTC is not a big enough funder for developments to make low-income housing affordable to the most low-income households. I'm talking about, 20 to 30% AMI. LIHTC cannot get its rent that low without pairing that program with rental assistance, such as home funds or Section 8 vouchers. You can think of LIHTC as the tool that helps to subsidize the construction of the building. It allows the developer to lower the rent from, say, $2,500 a month for market rate to $1,200 a month because of the subsidies. But even though that is a big discount, that still does not cover folks making minimum wage, for example. They still could not afford $1,200 a month. So that's where the Section 8 voucher comes in. And that makes up the difference, allowing the tenant to live in the home that has the lower rent. That makes up that gap there. So increasing LIHTC funding on paper doesn't necessarily translate into affordable housing units if investor demand for the tax credits drop. So in addition to when LIHTC credits are issued, investors buy them for a certain amount. I'm not a LIHTC person exactly, but I have heard that if you get closer to the dollar, they pay on the dollar, right? If they're paying 90 something cents for a dollar's worth of tax credits, then you're doing good. But the uh that value can fluctuate. And so if investors aren't as interested in buying LIHTC credits, then their price drops. And the folks who are selling their credits do not get as much money. So they're getting 80 cents on the dollar, say. And that, of course, adds up to millions of dollars when you add all those $1 together. And so what I'm getting at here is that if the price of materials is going up with tariffs, if the price of labor is going up because their ICE has swept all the workers and there's nobody to show up for work, regulations get in the way. If building is more expensive, rent keeps going up, LIHTC doesn't cover the amount that it used to, and there's no more Section 8 vouchers, all of these interconnected issues make it so that the development doesn't pencil. The folks can't live there. And so although the federal government seems like it doesn't affect local policy as much, all of the local policies tend to rely on the federal government doing what it said it's going to do and paying its subsidies, supporting LIHTC, supporting Section 8 like it's supposed to. So I think California is it's in an interesting position because although California is great to read about because you have some of the nation's most ambitious and effective affordable housing subsidies and programs. They're very powerful, but without funding stability, there is no way to actually follow through and get those programs to work. So let's see. We've got, you guys probably all know all of these, but when researching what local California bills I thought would be affected by changes on the federal level, we've got SB4, right, which is one that you guys hold near and dear. Of course, allows the churches and other nonprofits, right, you can bypass the regulations, you build affordable housing by right. So and also no parking mandates. This is a great. I was really excited to hear about it. I think Bert and Anthony, you guys were the ones who told me about it. So SB4, we've got SB 35 is another one. I think that's the one passed. It was 2017. That's the one that allows fast tracks of housing without the environmental quality review to meet the RHNA goals. We've got that bill. We've got other, let's see, AB 130 and SB 131. These were other scale backs of environmental quality regulations. Laws empowering the Attorney General to fine cities up to $50,000 for non-compliance with housing mandates. These are all really great. California is way ahead of the game. The issue with this, though, is that these tools assume stable funding pipelines. For example, the home program, Section 8, CDBG. So, for example, if you have a development that can be streamlined via SB4. If there is no federal support for the folks that are going to live there to have vouchers, then all of that fast tracking doesn't matter because you can't get rents low enough to support what you're trying to do. So what this will end up meaning is that folks will probably still try and build affordable housing, and there are ways to get this done, and these fast track bills and the legislation will help, but it will not be able to support the very low income folks. You know, if you're trying to go and build housing that can support folks that are really, really low income, 20, 30% AMI, that's just not possible without stable uh, funding from the federal government. And instead, you'll be funding new affordable housing for folks that are 60 to 80 AMI or 80 to 120, which of course is still needed, but we really need help for the really low income folks. So let's see here. I was going to I wrote out I'm going over my notes trying to get to Pasadena here. So recently, I found an article just this week when I was researching, talking with y'all. I learned that HACLA, y'all I'm sure know what HACLA is facing $150 million shortfall this year. And they knew that way back in January. So they were one of the folks that stopped issuing new vouchers. They were not reissuing delayed or expired vouchers. And they warned landlords that contract renewals may no longer be guaranteed. Who's going to stick around with that coming from the federal government? So as a result, landlords are opting out in LA. Tenants face uncertainty over renewals. People are losing their housing. They are self-evicting in some cases. That was back in January in LA. In looking again online, I'm hearing that this is now happening in Pasadena. Homelessness is on the rise, partly because of the fires, but also because of the federal funding shortage. I read about a recent point in time homelessness count Pasadena went through. And is, let's see, I thought I had pulled a great quote, but I don't think it's in here now. In short, sorry about that. In short, Pasadena is seeing now what LA, because it's bigger with more folks, was seeing in January. Without federal funding, local PHAs cannot issue new vouchers. They cannot guarantee landlords that they're going to be able to pay next month. They can't deliver on the policies that are in place via laws like SB 35 and SB 4, because although the city is cooperative and the state has the housing mandates that you have to continue adding a certain number of affordable housing units each year, if there is no way to make that pencil out because the federal government is no longer issuing project-based vouchers, they're not issuing Section 8 vouchers, and even if they are issuing LIHTC credits, those LIHTC credits don't go as far. We are going to start seeing even the best laid plans in progressive states like California just not be able to work. And I think that we're seeing that, like I said, in LA for most of this year, and then it looks like it's happening more in Pasadena now. So let's see. I think I would give you an example that hopefully will kind of bring it home to how this would relate to SB4 and what y'all do. Like, let's say that your church, a church in Pasadena, owns land, enough land, 3 acres, zoned for single family, but you've got this for right allowance to build affordable housing. So let's say you want to build I don't know, a couple dozen units of affordable housing, and you you have no permit risks. You've got all the automatic approvals. Zoning can't block the project. But like I was saying, in order to serve very low income tenants, the LIHTC money that you get isn't going to cover it. You need the, if you want to get down to 20 to 30% of AMI, you have to get the subsidies that will help keep the building operational because the rents aren't going to cover it. So without the Section 8 vouchers, without home grants, a without a reliable federal government, the cash flow just isn't there to keep operations going. And so I think that what folks, like I said, will be facing is making a decision of, do we abandon the project altogether? Do we do fewer units? Do we aim to serve folks that are not as low income? Do we bump up the affordability a little bit? Making all of these sacrifices because there's just no way to use the tools that you have locally to overcome the barriers that are being set up by the federal government at this point. So I think that those two issues from the federal government are really important for those of us who are trying to get affordable housing built on the local level. And I think to shift gears a little bit, have I gone over yet, by the way? Am I taking up too much time?
I
How are we
haven't,
doing on
you know,
time?
I didn't set the timer. Did somebody?
I
We
think
were
we're
saying 30
close.
minutes, but
I think we're around there. Yeah.
we're
I
close, I
think
think.
you're making some really good points. And I wanted to respond a little bit to what you're saying, because I think we're definitely in a very dire situation that we need to be extremely creative in how we think about funding sources right now. And there are some creative tools. I mean, there's cross subsidies, putting high-end housing with low-end housing. You can't do that with SB4. We're the ones that helped initiate SB4 and got it passed. We're very aware of the limitations. So then you have to change local zoning to allow some of that, and that's a whole lot of work, but it's not impossible. So, and there are, like Jim has been saying in the chat, you have to find other funding sources, and sometimes even private dollars. Or so it's you just have to get super creative. And I think we're all smart enough that we could come up with ways to figure it out, but it's going to be a whole lot more work. A whole lot more work. We've had some fabulous tools, and it's heartbreaking, just heartbreaking to see them go away. And but what you're saying is really important for us to know. Really important for us to know. So thank you. Yeah.
When we were discussing the preparation, you had mentioned that you were really interested in hearing about LIHTC, and I think that although LIHTC is, of course, really important and really useful, I really love the idea of private funding, and I have seen recent examples of successful projects, and the reason why they were able to be successful is because they didn't have to rely on public money, which is really a bummer.
Yeah.
I mean, that is what our federal government is supposed to do and what HUD is meant for. And the fact that it's become so complicated and so expensive to build affordable housing with federal funds, with public money, is really heartbreaking.
So it'd be interesting to know where those successful private dollar affordable at deeper subsidies are. Um, I think that's exceptionally hard to do in California with the cost of housing so extremely high. We've got all kinds of people trying to figure this out through, unique building materials that are cheaper from, you know, things built off site and brought in. And I mean, everyone's trying to figure it out. There's so many groups out there, but it's hard to get the deep subsidies for those that are experiencing homelessness. And so if you know successful projects, it'd be interesting, is it in areas where it's already not as expensive, so it's working financially to
I
their
do think
advantage.
that one project that I'm thinking of is certainly in an area where land is not, it's not in San Francisco Bay Area. It's not in a place where land is at a premium. And that was definitely one of the things that helped make it successful. Also, with this project, using prefab housing, they can get units in for $150,000 each but they're not building multifamily. They're just single family prefab units. And so if you're looking to get 189 units, then you've got to have many hundreds of acres. If you're doing, or I don't know how many,
Unless
but
the prefab is stackable, and we're seeing
unless they're
that.
stackable, which we're
Yeah.
seeing more and more innovations that are really, really interesting in the modular and factory built homes. And I think that there's a lot of potential there.
Well, I think that cities in California a lot of times don't want to change the skyline. They want to see
Well,
everything flat and the same. But the only way we can really do it is to go up. So we've got to figure out we're not building more land, we got to use what we've got to meet our needs. But yeah,
We have a question, or somebody raised their hand. Betsy?
hi, hi, thanks so much. It wasn't so, I mean, I have many questions, but I just wanted to, I'm up here in the Bay Area. I've personally been come around to the feeling that we absolutely have to have more RV parks. And not that it's cheap to build, but building with manufactured homes can get you tiny homes, small. You know, small gets you a lower carbon footprint. Not everyone should live or wants to live in a small unit in the sky, but the idea of tiny homes as a form of RV or vehicle trailer housing is over 10 years. I've seen it just barely get to the level of where one is legal in a backyard in LA. But parks, supposedly more than two or more, supposed to be legal in Oakland, but that still hasn't manifested. But Oakland has a lot of vacant lots. Of course, Detroit has a ton of vacant lots. Richmond, which is the same size as San Francisco, has a lot of empty land, some of it. And it's not the typical desire of a city to have lower value housing. So we really are up against a lot of obstacles, but I do wonder if there isn't some legal basis, for saying that if we're going to have this missing middle housing with fourplexes, eightplexes, small scale infill, I'm just wondering what solutions you see, because I do see tiny houses having been created in Detroit in particular, that people wealth can then be built up, but it's slow moving, and I haven't seen that in California yet. But I am actually hopeful when I hear Jill about an RV park. Just even that opening in an urban area, as ugly as it might be to me, you know, it's better
let
than
me let me just
people in
clarify,
parks.
because
So,
I don't think I made myself clear. So
okay.
we're
I'm
we're
asking
not
about
building,
tiny homes
yeah,
though.
and we're not doing tiny homes or RV parks. What we're doing is just allowing someone to live in their burnt property using their own sewage, their own
Oh, I see. I see.
their
For the
own
Altadena.
electricity, their own, yeah, for
Beautiful.
Altadena. Yeah.
It
So
used to be, even in Berkeley, which frankly has had a lid on housing for too many years, um, you could have a portable building while you were
mhm.
rebuilding after a fire. You could move in one of those, truly small things they use in schools, in overcrowded schools, where they would put a portable building. And I think that was taken away 10 years ago or something. But that's wonderful that you won that victory. And if that could be amplified to say, um, well, I'm curious, are there minimum, is there a minimum housing size that Altadena face? Like you've got to have a 3,000 square foot home. There's suburban areas that
Yeah,
actually
kind
do
of,
set
you've asked
age
about
limits.
maybe 4 questions, so maybe.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
that's okay. I
excited to
think they're
speak.
good questions. I'm just saying Shelby
Please.
maybe can answer some of those, and then there's some other
Yeah.
questions maybe I can respond to.
Thank you. Thank you. I see other hands up too. Thanks a lot.
I think you did ask a lot of questions. I'll say that as far as RV parks or really any type of alternative housing goes, I think that uh, if we could get the right kind of zoning reform to allow alternative types of housing, whether it is manufactured housing on chassis in regular neighborhoods, or whether it is excluding single family housing or allowing folks to park. I think that when the housing crisis is this severe, it should probably all be legal, is my short answer there.
Yeah, but it takes advocacy. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. The work you guys are doing is amazing.
So Linda, well, we have Linda has a question, then after that, Sonia.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for this wonderful meeting tonight. I'm definitely going to be looking at your newspaper, Shelterforce. Um, I volunteer for Glendale Tenants Union. I'm not on the money sides, but if you have anything to say about how people like Atun, the autonomous tenants, people coordinate and help with housing in however they are an advocate and help, please give a shout out. Also, but I do have a question that's bugging me for a long time. Glendale, 10 or 12 years ago, built these beautiful large apartment buildings all over, and I know that they did it with subsidy money. They know that the certain number of those apartments had to be for low income people. But when I go and ask the managers, they know nothing about it. Nothing, nothing. So I would like to know, as a researcher yourself, where do I need to go to pull up, how much to pull up the information I need on a specific property to say, you are supposed to be giving 20 units. Where are the 20 units? Can I interview any of the people? I'm sure they're going to say, no, you cannot. But I just want to know how if they are actually doing what they promised.
Sure. So I think that your best bet, the simplest way to do that would probably be to contact your local housing authority, the public housing authority, whether it's Glendale Public Housing Authority or if it's affiliated with the county. You might have more than one. But I think that would be your first place to go to find out with that address if there is public money still affiliated with that, and then what programs. I think the PHA would be your first stop there.
And the question that I would ask is,
Can I just respond also to that? I just looked up Glendale, and you do have what's called an inclusionary housing ordinance in your city. So 15% of all those units are set aside or supposed to be set aside for affordable, lower than 80% of the area median income, or 60%, pardon me. And so I they should have in the housing department of your city, that wouldn't so much have to do with the public housing authority, because that has to do with Section 8. This has to do with your housing department, and they should know about all those units that are inclusionary, those inclusionary units, and they could tell you more about how to maybe apply for those.
thank you. Last one.
Uh, oh, I'm sorry. Apologies.
about TOPA or land trust, tenants' opportunity to purchase a building. Because as a tenants union member, we see people in horrible conditions in these, old buildings that if they
Mhm.
could go down and buy them some way and keep them low income, that would be one way of, preserving low income housing.
Does California have a TOPA law?
I don't think so.
I think, I
It
don't,
failed in about 17 cities just this last election cycle, but there are still groups keeping it alive.
I see.
Possibly, but it's hard. Yeah, I'm sorry. You have the answer. Someone else there has the answer, but the realtors have put tens of millions, hundreds of millions to keep that lid on of TOPA.
Mm.
I mean, tenant opportunity purchase is a really great program in different ways that it is run, especially if the law allows for nonprofits or uh, secular groups. If there is I mean, it's a big lift, right? If your landlord comes and says, "Hey, we're selling this $10 million building. You want to buy it?" That's a big lift for tenants if they don't have some really strong support. So although TOPA is really, really useful, it takes a lot of organizing to get that done. A lot of activity, a lot of commitment from the folks who are living there or from a nonprofit or another organization that's ready to step in and administer the TOPA.
in Glendale, we're looking about $1 or $2 million, and it's about 20 units in these older buildings, these older singles.
In Colorado, I live in Colorado, and there have been tenants that have been able. They have TOPA for manufactured housing parks, and the county that I live in participated in a purchase to help the tenants at a local manufactured housing uh, park to buy their park. They pitched in. So I mean, the government, local governments might be a good resource if they have the money and the political will to back a tenant purchase on a $1 or $2 million.
Yeah.
Maybe it's attainable.
Thank you.
Sonia was next. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go, Sonia.
Hi, thank you so much for this great presentation, Shelby. A lot of really good information, and I really appreciate the fact that you brought up modular housing. I say that because we need, as Jill said, a lot more creative solutions. And like that Tay housing project that just got the $2 million from the from the trust, they need 40 some $1 million, and this is the first $2 million that they've gotten. The per unit price cost is going to be over $800,000 per unit, and we can't do that anymore. And maybe Jim can speak to this a little bit about prefab. Also, I know there's all kinds of Pasadena people who don't want any kind of low-income housing, but that's got to change. And so when we're talking about creative solutions, who's responsible for that? Maybe Jim can also talk about that. I know there are developers out there who have creative ideas, but my biggest criticism of our city and our housing department is that we have almost solely for our housing department relied on federal funding. We're still relying this year, it's 76% on federal funding, even though it's not coming. So we need to have and I've been saying this, we need to have a housing and affordable housing and homelessness committee. We now have about, it looks like 4 votes so far on the city council. One thinks that the planning department should be included within the housing and homeless committee of the city council. Because I see that as the place where they can really focus on creative solutions and making this go. It's going to be hard, but making it at least go a little bit faster. We don't want our homelessness, unsheltered homelessness went up 7% this past year. So and what you're saying, I believe, Shelby, we're going to have a lot worse numbers next year if we don't do something. Anyway, maybe Jim can speak to that a little bit. And I'd also like to hear from anybody else who has an idea of who can really push these creative solutions and really drill down into how our city is going to meet this. If it's not our housing department or the city council as a whole, can we do that through a affordable housing and homelessness committee?
I'm happy to chime in now if it's my turn.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Well, we've had a great conversation. Shelby, thank you for your thoughts, and I enjoy reading your articles. And we've covered a lot of ground here. Overall, in general, first of all, I'm in favor of anything and everything that helps get people out of the streets and into shelter. Of course, but having said that, there's different solutions for different locations. People mentioned Detroit and Cleveland, where there's abundant vacant land going unused. And the solution there of putting an RV or a modular or a tiny home on land like that in a location like that probably makes a lot of sense. And if we can do those solutions here in LA, by all means, we should. But let me just give you a quick numerical example. We built 180 units on about a half an acre of land, and somebody in this panel here, Jill or Sonia or Anthony, could tell us how many tiny homes you could get on that same acreage. Because tiny homes by their nature are one story, and we have a 6-story building. Our cost per unit to build back in 2021 was about $255,000 per unit, which is awesome because many affordable housing projects do cost 700, 800, a million per unit, and more than that up in the Bay Area. So just when you look at the land economics of putting tiny homes on really expensive, scarce, valuable land anywhere in the LA area, in general, it's hard to get it to work. But having said that, if those units are portable and you can and you find some land that's not being used currently, and you can drive units on there and have housing there for a while, a year, 2 years, 3 years, that's better than nothing at all. Same thing with the idea of RVs. Manufactured housing, I've been following that trend for 20 to 30 years, and it still remains a pretty small percentage of the overall housing that's built, single family, multifamily, but it's growing, and it's finally, maybe, hopefully, starting to come into its own and starting to be cost effective versus stick built in the field. So I'm optimistic. And then here in California, we've passed in the past 5, 6, 7 years, truly amazing legislation at the statewide level that is unprecedented. Typically, in the past, all land use decisions were made at the local level, and the state has just stepped in and said, that's not working, and we're going to allow ADUs. We're going to allow duplexes. We're going to do SB4 and allow housing on congregational land. We're going to allow affordable housing on school land. We're going to allow density bonuses. We're going to allow parking reductions in transit areas. And all of these individually and collectively in the long run are going to have a positive, favorable impact on housing production. But housing production takes so long, and the need right now is so great that we have a period to get through before we see that housing production result from all of this legislation. And right now, what's happening is people might look and say, well, we've passed all these great ordinances, but nothing's really happening. We're not getting housing production out of it. It's not because those are bad laws. It's because the cost of housing to create the housing has gone up. The interest rates to borrow money, whether it's for our homes or for apartment buildings, has gone up from about 3% to about 7%. That impact is significant and very hard factor to overcome. In the short haul, we have these hurdles that we have to get over, and it's going to be tough. I could not build today Pasadena Studios, which we got it to work in 2021, but I can't get that same exact idea concept to work in 2025 because of the high cost of capital and the high cost of production. Those are temporary; those will go away. But in the meantime, we still have a shortage of affordable housing for the homeless. We have a shortage of affordable housing for the middle class, the workers. In conclusion, in the long term, I'm positive that we're going to see housing production start to help with the shortfall. But in the short term, it's going to be continue to be a challenge.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say there, I agree with everything that you said, Jim. I also want to point out that no amount of production in some cases can cater to certain renters. Like there is just always going to be a class of renters who cannot afford market rate rent.
Yeah.
Even when market rate rent isn't as astronomical as it is now. And so if we rely on just production to make up for the 7 million unit shortfall that the nation has, I think that we are just missing a big chunk of the population. Like we can't expect the market to fix everything. That's why we have folks like y'all, building below market rate housing, is because even when it does pencil, Jim, and I love your SRO. I think that one of the big mistakes that we made was stopping building single resident occupancy buildings. Anyway, I agree that I find it fascinating that 4 years later you were unable to make it pencil out. That is like a canary in the coal mine of what's going on, or that's just that's fascinating to me. But even so, I guess I'm just pointing out that we need subsidies, or we need folks that are willing to make up the difference, whether it's in inclusionary zoning where you have mixed income units and the folks who do pay more are subsidizing the folks that don't. We're always going to need subsidies.
Shelby, I agree 100%. We need support for affordable housing, particularly permanent supportive housing for the homeless, but also even for those with incomes. We need federal support. We need state support. We need local support in terms of inclusionary housing ordinances. We need grants and philanthropy to meet the needs for our most needy residents. The market alone will never produce housing at a rental rate that works for those folks.
But there's some things that I think are important to note here. We have this awesome local micro unit. We don't call them SROs anymore. They're called micro units. And we allow that anywhere in our city on commercial properties. I mean, that's pretty I mean, the good news is that we can pass local policy right now,
Mm.
and we can get some really good things. And so micro units, just by virtue of being small, are going to be less expensive. But
Can I add another thing that's
about
a positive? Oh, sorry.
50% of our friends on the street actually have jobs, but they don't pay enough to live indoors. And so, but I don't think GR is going away. We still have that, right, Shelby? General relief for those experiencing homelessness. At least they get a little bit, you know? Yeah. So,
Can I mention another thing that's going to help with housing in our state?
yes.
The governor has effectively gotten rid of CEQA. That was a huge obstacle for housing. It was used by NIMBYs to stop all kinds of projects, especially affordable housing. So, although I'm not, I don't believe in deregulating everything. I think reducing some of the regulatory burden on housing will help to make it less expensive. Especially we need to do that with affordable housing.
And you were going to talk about the bond issue too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of in our last 8 minutes.
Yes.
So I know, Anthony, you were going to talk about some state bonds, and I don't know, if Shelby, if you were going to talk about some federal stuff, or if you already did.
I think I mentioned pretty much everything. The only thing I didn't touch on was the cooperation. We had all talked about the cooperation between DHS and ICE and how that was affecting HUD. But y'all can just read my story on Shelterforce.
Okay.
I wrote about that, so I'll plug Shelterforce that way and say we don't have to talk about that. I was going to suggest a couple action items for
That's what we want now.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that although it looks like Congress is not accepting the president's proposal, they are still they're not funding Section 8 to where it needs to be. They are still looking to impose a 2-year cap and make work requirements. So I think a thing that we can all do is contact our congressperson and let them know to save Section 8, to fund Section 8 to where it needs to be and to not accept any of these cuts. I also think that a lot of local folks, local policymakers, I think that's another thing that you can do is reach out to local policymakers, because I think that a lot of people don't understand that what happens on the federal level will affect all of these amazing laws that California has. And so if you let your local policymakers know that if Section 8 goes, then those local laws that protect affordable housing won't have any teeth behind them. So I think you can do those two things to try and make a difference moving forward.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for having me very much.
Yeah.
Thanks. Anthony, did you want to?
Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Good. Let me just adjust this. So, for some reason, I'm not popping up. Can you see me as well?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I can see you. I don't know if anybody else can.
Okay. Anyway, I just want to share one of the proposals that we really support is the Affordable Housing Bond Act of 2026, which would place $10 billion of funds for affordable housing. And it's Assembly Bill AB 736 and Senate Bill 417. So just to give you an idea what this bill would do, it would have $5 billion for multifamily housing, and an additional $1.7 billion for permanent supportive housing. It would have $800 million for the preservation of housing, $500 million for community anti-displacement and preservation. It would have $1 billion for CAL homes and home purchase assistance for low-income home purchasers, $250 million for the tribal housing grant program, and $350 million for the farm workers housing grant program, and $400 million for infill infrastructure grants. So it's a great sort of catch-all, touching a lot of different areas, and it would result in about 35,000 new units of deeply affordable housing. It would preserve or rehabilitate 442,000 homes and make home ownership possible for about 13,000 low-income households. So it's a great bond. Ordinarily, bonds are not the greatest thing because you have to pay interest. But when we're in a dire emergency like we are today, where funding is being draconianly cut, I think supporting this bond would be a really good thing. And we at MHCH are encouraging you to write to your elected officials, and I'll put in the chat how you can do that. Thanks.
And you're
I
going to
also
send it.
just,
We're going to send
yeah,
an email out to everyone too, right?
Yes, everybody will get an email with our recommendations and also the ones that were made by Shelby.
so I also just put in the chat a link to Housing California's description of the grant and how you can support it.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So we got a few more minutes here. Were there any other questions that came up? Or I'm gonna look through and see if anybody had questions didn't know how to do, wasn't able to use the raise the hand signal. I don't see anybody waving at us. All right.
There's a Betsy. She has another question, I think.
Okay.
Let me make it an actual question. Is anyone here involved with Housing Now? Exclamation point. It's a part of the national alliance that is leading the way on social housing to build the inventory of permanently off the market, not-for-profit housing, but it is base building. And I really respect. So is anyone part of that or Tenants Together, another base building collaborative partner to Housing Now? And Housing Now is down in Southern California. So
I know
there's
some of the folks that helped start that, and yeah, they're
they're
doing good
active
work.
now,
Yeah,
or
yeah. I think there's so many great organizations that I think if someone isn't part of something to support it, they need to be, but thanks for bringing that up.
I just see very strongly we have to have a movement, not of isolated actors, each doing
Right,
good things. We
right.
have to build the base of voters and build a base that, supports
Yeah,
the infrastructure, the ecosystem, if you want to call it that. And I myself have concluded tenants' rights, tenant equity is actually an important element of this movement that
absolutely.
our committed community housing developers just can't pull it off.
Yeah.
But we're middle
And here
class
in
advocates.
Pasadena, Betsy, there's a ton of us that were involved in bringing,
I know you're pioneers there.
well, we were bringing rent stabilization. We got 13,000 signatures to get that on ballot that were valid, actually 15,000 that were valid. And so it passed in flying colors, but it took years, to do that. It's really, like you said, it's a movement.
Exactly.
It's a
Base
whole
building.
community coming together to make that happen. But we need to end Costa-Hawkins here in California so we can have true rent control. So
Hands down.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for your comments. Yeah. Is there anything else, Bert, that you wanted to say or?
No, I think we're good. If well, thanks everybody for coming. This has been great. Thank you so much,
Pleasure.
Shelby, for your presentation. It was excellent. We really appreciate you being here, and we encourage everybody to check out her articles and check out Shelterforce. And this will be recorded, so we are sending this out with our newsletter, and so it will be on YouTube. So thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting